Hello, everybody, and welcome to the live stream. I hope everybody's here and was able to tune in okay. I'm excited to see everybody that might be joining us. We're just going to give it a couple of moments. I think I may have started the live stream about a minute early, but if you're here, this is great. Awesome. Well, welcome, everybody. So if you're on YouTube, if you want to hit the chat button, say hello. If you're on one of the other platforms, I know that a lot of times you can't comment and such, but you can comment after the fact in the YouTube comments. So great to see everyone here. Welcome back. I haven't done a live stream for a couple of weeks now, but I wanted to do this live stream specifically because I've been getting a lot of questions around a couple of topics that this relates to. The first topic that I've been getting a lot of questions around, and just a quick note, make sure you guys can hear me. Just comment if you can hear me in the comments if you happen to be there. But yeah, so I wanted to do this particular topic on collaboration using Microsoft 365. And Microsoft 365 is really the evolution of Office 365, our beloved suite of different tools that we can use to do different types of work in school, and we can do different types of works when we're teaching in business, all sorts of cool stuff. And the reason that I wanted to come into this topic is because another comment that I'm often getting is comments about, well, in the world of business, in the world of work, going in the work world, will artificial intelligence and AI replace me? And we're seeing things, for example, that we can use artificial intelligence to do things like create a presentation. So does that replace PowerPoint? We even hear that Microsoft is building AI features into PowerPoint, and they are. So does that mean that all I'll need to do is go in and generate a presentation automatically? Well, that's going to be a tool that you will have available. In fact, I'm not sure how many of you have heard about Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft Copilot is built-in tools to help us in our work world. Now, same thing applies for Microsoft Word. Can we use Microsoft Word in order to use artificial intelligence like Copilot to do some sort of writing in Microsoft Word? And you might say, well, wait, where's this going? Well, the real key to being successful in a world of AI and making sure that AI doesn't replace your job is doing those things that only humans can do. And that's the things like strategic thinking, critical thinking, the way to relate to other people. And those types of things are really outside of the realm of AI, certainly at this point in time. Maybe at some point, if we have generalized artificial intelligence, well, that's a whole other discussion, but that still is a few years, maybe many years in the future. So I wanted to start tonight by talking a little bit about not just using different applications in the Microsoft suite, but to actually use them in a collaborative manner. And I think that if we're an instructor, we need to make sure that these are the skills we're teaching our students, how to collaborate using tools, not just how to click and use the tool itself. And I guess, as a YouTuber, I'm kind of in between those two worlds, because on the one hand, a lot of the people that will come to look at my videos on a YouTube channel on Learning and Technology with Frank, a lot of people will come to this channel in order to learn how to do something with the tool. They'll want to know what buttons to click and what to do. And that's a legitimate need. But what I want to do is I want to have a series of live streams, of which this is the first, where I go beyond that and I talk about how do we synthesize using those tools in a collaborative manner so that we can do things like think strategically, think critically, and do things that are really within the realm of the human experience. So I hope, and that sounds pretty philosophical for a live stream. Welcome to Sunday Night Live Stream, the most philosophical live stream you're ever going to know. So the point, though, being is that I get a lot of requests on how to use these tools for collaboration. And I want to go one level above that. And I want to talk about what does it mean to be strategic in our collaboration? What does it mean to use the tools in a collaborative manner? And then, of course, there is the mechanical aspects to using the tool itself. Click here, click there, click here, click there. So that's where we're going for this evening. Now, what I've done is I've got a whiteboard here that I'm going to share, and I'll just put myself down in the corner here so that you guys can see a little bit more clearly. Let me know if you have any issues seeing or clearing. I've got the chat off to the side so I can see your chat comments as well. Again, if you're on one of the platforms that supports chat. I believe that both LinkedIn and YouTube support chat, but we'll see. So I'm sitting right now. Now, just so you guys know, I'm running this live stream off of my Mac. I'm running a virtual machine running Windows 11, and I'm logged in with my personal or my business Microsoft 365 account. And I am using software called Camo 2 in order to do the video. So if you want to sort of know what's being used here, so I can do all sorts of cool stuff with Camo 2. I just released a video on Camo 2, so you can catch that. But you can do all sorts of very cool things with. A cat stuck on my head again. For heaven's sakes, that's a little Camo trick that you can do. Anyways, back to the topic of tonight. So when I go into my Microsoft 365 account, you can see here that I just have an absolute ton of different applications that comprise the Microsoft 365 suite. Each of these different tools are videos that I've made on the channel for almost all of these tools. If not, let me know if there's a tool here that you would like some more information on how to use. But this becomes a shopping list of the different tools that we can use in order to work with the Microsoft suite. And so a good example of that is I might have a tool such as SharePoint. And if I have a tool such as SharePoint, where I'm going in and I'm very likely to recommend it. So in fact, I've made many videos on it. So I might have a tool like SharePoint, even with my terrible handwriting there. And that tool, SharePoint, might be something that I can use in order to create a centralized repository of resources that people within my organization can come into SharePoint, and they can use those resources in the SharePoint environment, and they can collaborate through the concepts of file sharing or resource sharing. Not bad. That's pretty cool. But that's only one of the applications that I have within my Microsoft 365. And I might say Office 365 every so often. We know that individually, I might have another tool such as Outlook. And we know that with Outlook, what I can do is I can go in and I can use that to, read my email, check my email, send email, manage a calendar, manage some different tasks that I have. Now we can extend the collaboration capabilities of Outlook by hooking it into SharePoint. And then I might have another application like a cloud-based storage or OneDrive. You kind of probably can see where I'm going here. And OneDrive I can use individually. I can use it personally. I can store my files into OneDrive. I can retrieve them. I can share them with others. And it becomes even more powerful when I have both an individual OneDrive where I can store data, and we have a OneDrive where my team can store data. Not the same OneDrive, they're different OneDrives, but we can integrate the two together. And this process continues. So this process continues. I can create a Word document, but by putting it onto a SharePoint site, or by putting it onto a OneDrive, or by emailing it to someone, which is not the best way to share a Word document, but if I put it into a common repository on a OneDrive, I put a link to it on a SharePoint site, then all of a sudden I can collaborate on that Word document. And in fact, we can collaborate on that Word document in real time using a tool such as Microsoft Loop, where I can use Loop components, and what we can do is I can share a link so we can collaborate on that product at the same time. Now, I don't know about you, but I find that if I was looking at all of these tools and I was just sort of starting out here, I would probably find it just a little bit overwhelming to have all of these applications here that I needed to learn how to work with. So I have to learn everything about OneDrive, everything about Outlook, everything about Excel, everything, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, you can do that, and you can certainly take courses in all of these applications, but what we want to do before we even start learning these different tools is we want to kind of think more about the strategic way that we can use these tools in a collaborative manner. And I think that's really where, for example, artificial intelligence cannot do that. I can have artificial intelligence do a really good job of writing an article for me, and then I can look at it. I can have artificial intelligence do a really good job of creating an Excel formula for me. But the strategic application and the ability to share that information with others in a way that facilitates a business process is a specific skill set that I don't necessarily see being taught or studied as much as I potentially think it should be. I'd be interested in your comments or thoughts on that, either as you're watching this live stream or after the fact. Do you find that, it's overwhelming to have all of these applications that you need to learn? Or do you find it that you spend most of your time just living in one application and not the others? Or do you find that, you understand the applications, but other people in your organizations don't understand them in the same way you do, or you're not using them in a way where you're collaborating on processes that drive your organization forward? So what do? Well, what we want to do is we want to put ourselves into a situation where we take this collaboration, and I'll just go ahead and clear the canvas here. So we'll go ahead and clear the canvas on here. Oh, I just have to right click on here. So yeah, we'll go ahead. Oh, so my Mac's being a little bit funny. So I'll just go here and we'll erase the entire canvas here. So the idea of what we want to do here is we want to make sure that we're not just going in and creating a shopping list of different applications that we learn one at a time. And really the core of collaborating when it comes to the Microsoft 365 is to look at a SharePoint environment, which is really sort of the portal server that allows me to hook all of the other applications into it. So it acts as the central repository for all of my work. Then what I can do is use external services. So for example, I can use an authentication service like Microsoft's Active Directory in order to create individual users and groups accounts. They will then have access to the appropriate SharePoint sites and the appropriate SharePoint groups and resources. Then, for example, and you've seen this on a lot of the videos here on my channel, I might have an application for collaboration, and a great application for collaboration is Microsoft Teams. So I can use Microsoft Teams as a collaborative platform. And in fact, if you go into Microsoft Teams, underneath Teams, you'll find that it's actually a SharePoint site. So you can actually bring a SharePoint site into Teams. And then what you've got on there is you've got a chat section for posts. You've got channels in your Teams environment, but mostly it sits on top of SharePoint. There's an underlying SharePoint site. Then what I can do is I can augment that by putting in some sort of storage solution. We know that in the world of Microsoft, the storage solution is the OneDrive, right? So we have OneDrive. And then what we can do is we can look at how we use all of the other applications in order to run processes through all of the infrastructure that I've just built here. And that requires some strategic understanding of what inputs we have for the various processes that we have. And these could be individual personal productivity goals. So if you're doing personal productivity, that's fine. Microsoft now has a new tool coming out. They've already released it. It's in beta right now, but it's going to be very similar to a tool called Notion, where it's a markup language, but we won't go there. But we'll have process inputs. Then what we'll have is the process itself, and then we'll have the process outputs. We understand this from an individual standpoint, but where the interesting part comes into play is when we have multiple team members that are actually engaged in this process. So rather than just one team player, I might have, for example, a process that is done by one individual who passes it on to another individual, or I might have a situation where a process is worked upon by multiple individuals during stages of the process. So for example, I might have somebody who initiates a purchase order, then somebody who approves the purchase order, and then a third person who actually executes the transfer of funds for that purchase order. It's a simple analysis of a process that could be much more complex, or a process that could include many sub-processes. My point here being is that instead of saying, oh, I'm going to learn how to write a formula in Excel, now what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, I'm going to learn what tool is most appropriate for what portion of this process. And what we can also do is we can go in and we can use a very neat tool that Microsoft has. It's over here. It's called Power Automate. And what I can do is Power Automate will actually allow me to create a programmatic flow through a process and automate certain elements of that process. So for example, let's say I was doing an approval process and I might have something in Power Automate where if somebody is within a certain department or a certain position and has rights, they can initiate a purchase order for any items below $500 and they will be automatically approved without the need for a person to come in and approve it. And so but that's dependent upon the organization. You can have these processes in play. So the idea is that Power Automate can allow me to take routine processes and I can automate them. And that becomes more interesting as well as we start looking at things like Copilot. So what I can do is I can have Copilot maybe within one of the steps of Power Automate perform some sort of artificial intelligence on that step in order to determine, for example, whether purchasing pens it certainly would fall underneath $500, but maybe we have a per unit cost of below $2 is acceptable for an office pen. So any pens that cost more than $2 will throw an exception. And I'm just going through some hypothetical scenarios. So we can see here that we have infrastructure, we have storage, OneDrive, we have authentication, Active Directory, we have a collaboration platform, Teams, we have a central repository to glue this together, SharePoint. Then we have processes. These processes can be automated through Power Automate. And then throughout, we can use appropriate tools for whatever we're trying to accomplish within the process. So for example, if I'm wanting to communicate through email, then Outlook comes into play. If I want to go through and I want to, for example, both receive and assign tasks, then I could use Outlook as well. I could automate the tasks. You could actually have a task initiated from Teams, comes into SharePoint, goes into a process. The task is authorized. Power Automate then says, okay, and it lands in the mailbox of the individual that is responsible for that task. We can build these flows within the Microsoft 365 environment, but we can't build the flows until we identify and know what those flows are. But what we can then do is choose from this menu of different applications that I have: Outlook, OneDrive, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, and SharePoint, and Teams, and Bookings, and Yammer, and Power Automate. And we can go through and say to ourselves, which is the most appropriate use of that particular tool for a particular purpose. So for example, you'll notice right now that I'm using Whiteboard, and I chose Whiteboard specifically for this live stream because I wanted to make sure that I could build ideas while you watched, and you could see the ideas being built in front of you. Have some tea here. Delicious. Okay, so again, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to pop them into the chat, or if it's just something you want to ruminate on for a while, feel free to talk about it or post comments or questions after the fact, when I'm going through. So the next thing that now that we understand that really what we're looking at here is we're trying to find a way for us to go in and not just look at Microsoft 365 as a collection of programs that we have to learn or applications that we have to learn. So instead of a laundry list of applications that we have to learn in order to participate in a modern workplace, what the real key is to look at the processes and flow of how an organization works, how we communicate, how we accomplish our work, and then from that perspective, strategically choose the correct Microsoft application to accomplish that goal. And what that leaves us with is a little bit of a list, or a laundry list, if you would, of the different applications that we have here in order to work with. And what we have here is, you can see I've gone into my Microsoft 365 account, I've logged into it, and I have a number of different applications here. I'm just going to make sure that my little, that's okay, you can see all the apps, perfect. I just want to make sure that my little head down below here wasn't blocking apps up here. Okay, so if I go in here, you can see that these are the applications that I have sort of on my main dashboard. And if I go into all apps, you can see it becomes quite an extensive list of apps. Now, I've also got third-party apps that I've added in here. So I've added things like Acrobat, Alt VR Space. So you can see here I've got a number of different applications that I've added in here and websites that I've added in here in order to extend my Microsoft 365. But I'll tell you right now, we won't extend it tonight, right? So the idea is that tonight I'm setting up a framework, and then the goal here is that I'm hoping that to release videos on the YouTube channel as well as additional live streams where I will go into the use of each of these apps in detail. So for example, I will create a video, have a video scheduled. I just released a video today on the software I'm using for the webcam, which is not a Microsoft product, which is Camo. I'll be releasing another video on a new document scanner that I have early this week. But then the video after that is going to be on Microsoft Office and some of the collaboration features, and then live streams to support that. So bookings. What we can do is, and sort of what I recommend doing here, I wonder if I can grab this. I don't think I have it handy, but what I've done is I've created a large mind map of all the different applications for the Microsoft 365 suite. And what I've done is branched off of each product, and I've created basically a very simple structure, which I will be sharing over the next few live streams. And that is, what is the product? What purpose does it serve within an organization? What is the application? And what are 4 or 5 things that I can do with it very quickly? And I can, 4 or 5 main things that I might do with it. So for example, bookings, a lot of these applications have names that kind of indicate what they are. Bookings is an application where what you can do is you can stand up the ability for people to make bookings with you. So this is very handy, for example, if you are a service provider, or let's say you provide service even internally or even with students, you can set up bookings, and then you can allocate what times you're going to be available to be booked. And then people can come in through a web interface and they can book time with you. So for example, if I'm an instructor and I have students that need my help during a period of time, maybe what I'll do is I'll book half-an-hour blocks throughout every week. I'll have a half-hour block in the morning, half-hour block in the afternoon, and students can come, and if it's available, they can book it. So that's an example of bookings, and I'm not going to demonstrate them all this evening, but I am going to talk about what they are. Please keep in mind that these should all be considered within the context of a structured and strategic approach, and then we'll go through that in some subsequent live streams. Calendar is pretty straightforward. Calendar is a calendar to keep track of appointments and such. Some of these I'll go over pretty quickly. Now we also have compliance. Now this here is actually more of a management of the 365. So you may not get this as a user of 365. I'm the manager of my 365 environment. I have my own domain. And you know what? Let me know if you're interested. I can make a video on how to register a domain and set yourself up as an admin. So yeah, it's completely, so, Achima's saying here, I agree. It can be a bit overwhelming, and knowing your organization's process flow helps you to be strategic about the way you optimize the use of Microsoft 365 for collaboration, even if you're not attained mastery of every tool in the offering. I could not agree more. That is, so one of the things that's so important to me, and I hope you can sense the sincerity here, is that I feel that if I was to, in my day job, if I was to teach students how to click through a bunch of buttons, I think I would have failed them miserably. Because what I really want them to do is think about how to apply tools to achieve an objective, and then those buttons are going to change. New features and functionality are going to come out, but at the core, if you can think strategically and if you can think creatively, then 2 things. 1, you become invaluable to whatever organization you work for. And 2, you actually become irreplaceable by something like an AI. And I know it sounds like that's, the sky is falling, but AI is something to be frightened about. Because if my job is to create, a Word document, every day I create Word document, or every day I'm creating some sort of copy for my website. A great example is news, right? These days, any type of sports recap, any type of financial market recap, those are not being written by humans anymore. That's been written by AI for actually some time now, and never more so than now in the days of GPT-3, GPT-4. News recaps of simple, facts in a new format, AI can do that. But telling me what is important and what is going to affect something else, that still requires human intervention of strategic and critical thought. Now, in my own day job, my main job is teaching data analytics. And a classic example of a tool that we use is called Power BI. Well, guess what? Copilot and things like some of the data scraping that can happen makes building of an automated dashboard much easier. And in fact, Microsoft has a product. It's not listed as a separate element here. Maybe it is. I'll have to see. But it's called Microsoft Viva. And when I did my master's degree, my master's was in learner self-efficacy through data-driven dashboards. Basically, what it was is using AI and data-driven analysis in order to create the next best thing to learn for students. So the idea is if I have a class of 25 students, they're all going to be at different levels, and I want to make sure that student number 7 is getting what they need to learn, and maybe student number 9 needs a little bit more, and maybe student number 12 needs just a little extra help. And by using data, I can determine where they are, and I can help resource them and mentor them. Well, Microsoft Viva does that. So what it does is it goes into your organization and it actually looks at how your people are working. So if you're in a business organization, it looks at what document flows are there. It looks at who's talking with whom. It looks at what skills people have. It can make suggestions of people you should probably connect with based upon similar interests in that. So it can actually mine the data from the organization's movement of data, and it can determine next best steps. And there's another tool. It's all under the Viva umbrella. There's Viva Learning. So Viva Learning will go in and it'll look at what you're interacting with, and it'll recommend different courses to you, a lot of times on Microsoft Learn or a YouTube video, and it'll say you should watch this at this point and you should watch this. Right now, a great example, I mean, this is YouTube, so I'm, sort of, the kind of meta here, but the idea is that, most people come to my channel through a search function. They're coming to me because they're trying to figure something out. But you don't know what you don't know. Wouldn't it be cool if you brought YouTube up and it says, hey, not just a recommendation engine to keep you on the platform longer and make you watch more ads, but also if it kept you on the platform to kind of feed what you're trying to do in your life. Anyways, I digress, but that's the idea behind it. So really good comment, Achima. That makes a lot of sense to me. So if I look over here, so we have things like Microsoft Delve. So you can see here, if you go into Microsoft Delve, I can go into these programs. So underneath Microsoft Delve, this is going to allow me to do an analysis on so you can see here, I can look at different documents in here. Now there are some things in here where I'll just go back here into my applications here, go into all apps. You can see here that with Microsoft Delve, I can go in, see different documents that are popular in my organization. It'll bring me the most relevant articles. It'll bring me the most relevant things that I need in order to, to do my work. So this is kind of a recommendation engine. You can only imagine that that's going to become even more powerful when it comes to artificial intelligence and such. Just going back to all apps here. Okay, so if you look here, so Microsoft Delve, Excel, we all know Excel. It's a spreadsheet / data analysis tool. It's one of those tools that grew up from being a very simple spreadsheet type of tool to a tool that has a lot of functionality. And in fact, I got to show you guys this. So I don't get a lot of paper books these days. I get most of my books are ebooks. This is just one of the books that I have on working with Excel for data analysis. I get this for my students in electronic form, but when it first came out, they didn't have a Kindle book, so they sent me a paper one. I can use that to swat flies or large animals. Forms, Microsoft Forms allows me to collect information with an organization. Just recently, we have a conference that's coming up for our school. We were able to send out a form, collect information. Now we can export that to Excel. That gives us the emails. We can start communicating with people. You see how we have a flow happening here? So we can create a whole connected series of events using tools for the appropriate use. We have something called Kaizala, right? So I've got that added in there. I'm not going to go, I'll go through some of the more common ones. That's kind of a little bit of an uncommon one, so I won't go into that one there. But, well, if I go into Kaizala here, we'll go into here. You can see the different apps that pop in here. And you can see, actually, this one is a third-party app, so it might not be working. So let's grab this one here. I'll just do these ones here. We have PowerPoint for doing presentations, obviously very important. OneNote, which is a note-taking application. Do I use AI for automated process? So yeah, so when it comes to using AI, so when it comes to Microsoft 365, there's sort of two different types of automation. There's AI generated automation, which is Microsoft Copilot. And that hasn't really come out to a lot of general release. It's kind of new. But what that will do is think of it like a digital virtual assistant, where if I'm working on, let's say I've determined that I need to create a Word document, then it will help me create the proper language for the Word document. That's AI acting to support me in my activity. The other type of automation, which could be AI enabled as well, is called Power Automate. And Power Automate is basically a series of steps where if I take a process in my organization and I define each of the steps with, if this, then that, do this, then do this, wait for this, collect this, do this. If I can write out what I'm doing as a process in plain language, then I can very easily bring that into Power Automate and I can build a process. A classic example of that would be I could build a Power Automate script so that whenever I post a video on YouTube, it automatically puts a post into Microsoft Teams that I've published a new video. Or I could create a Power Automate script that runs in the background in Microsoft Outlook. So if you send me an email, I can right click on the email and I can generate a task that will remind me to respond to you within 24 hours. That's Power Automate. And the number of different types of scripts you can write is, I wouldn't say infinite because that's infinite is infinite, but many, 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 right? So does that answer your question, Shahram? I hope so. And you can just let me know it now or whenever. And if not, so a lot of these, like I said, I'm going to be making individual videos on how to use Power Automate. I'm going to make an individual video on how to use OneNote effectively, how to use Teams effectively. I've made many videos on that. But the idea is that, this is the beginning of the Sunday night live streams, where what I'm hoping to do is when I create those videos that answer questions of how to use something, that the Sunday night becomes something where you can pick my brain at live if you want. I mean, right now, I'll have to have a look. I think we only have a few people. Yeah, it's like only 4 or 5 of us here right now. So it's a pretty small group, but it'll grow. And you guys will get, if I ever make hats or something, you can OG live streamer. So we can go in here. So we look at some of the other ones in here. Other good examples are, where's my mouse? There it is. So other good examples of apps that we have is forms I talked about. Lists is a way of keeping track of different lists. Once again, that list could be embedded in a SharePoint site, shared by many people. It could also be put into a Teams site. One list in many locations. So the benefit of keeping lists is that, let's say we're working on a project together, we can brainstorm, create a list of what we need to do, share that list out, but not just share it out like, oh, here's an object I'm sharing out. It's dynamic, centralized, and part of collaboration. I could even create a Power Automate script that will populate that list with new tasks as circumstances dictate. So for example, maybe one of the items on my list is to order additional food. So if I go beyond 50 people attending an event, then it triggers on my list, order additional food, things like that. OneDrive is for storage, so I can store things in OneDrive. I've made some videos on OneDrive. I use OneDrive. I also use sync.com because I have unlimited storage there. Those are good. Other ones would be like Dropbox, iCloud, but OneDrive integrates with SharePoint and the entire Microsoft 365 ecosystem. OneNote, like I said, is note-taking. Outlook, most people are familiar with. That's an email, calendaring, task communication system. Don't worry about partner. It's just because my company is also a Microsoft partner, so I can help other organizations manage their Microsoft 365 environment. So that's I don't do that as much anymore. I kind of teach and do YouTube right now. I only have so many hours in a day. But if you're overwhelmed by this and you're a small business or even a large business, you can seek out a Microsoft partner that might be able to give you expert advice in one domain, or they might be able to give you overall advice in how to integrate these things together. People are people. That's an old Depeche Mode song. Anyways, Planner is a planning piece of software. It's not quite as powerful as Microsoft Project, which is coming up later, but Planner, think of Project as being geared towards a specific project with a finite beginning and end, whereas Planner might be micro projects or might be something where you have a way of planning, say, the bringing on new hires, and you do that every summer. So you bring on new interns every summer out of university and out of technical schools in order to work with your organization, and you have a planner plan. In order to do that, you can then work the plan through the Planner app. Power apps, there are several Power apps. So Power Apps, so there's Power App, Power Automate, Power BI. What's with all this power? Okay, so it's kind of interesting to see these things related to each other. So Power Apps is, they would say, the ability to write programs without having to know how to write programs. So if you're a programmer, chances are you're using languages such as Java, Python, C#, all of the different languages that you might use in order to write a formal computer program. Ever since I was very young, everybody always, from the days of the very first BASIC, everybody who came out with a new programming language would say, this is easy. It's English-like. SQL Server, that's not hard. SQL language is just like English. Python, it's just like English. Well, it's not really just like English. It's a lot harder than that. So what it is that Power Apps is a way of visually creating programs that allow you to do things in your organization. You could have those written for you. You could write those on your own. It's a little bit more technical, but think of it like applications that you're writing that relate to your programs and your systems and your strategies. So thanks very much, Terry. I appreciate it. I hope it's useful to you. It's a little bit, like I say, it's a big overview, and we're going to go deeper into some other live streams, but it's important to have this bigger picture before we go into the nitty gritty of, what button do I press to send an email, right? So Power Apps is a way of basically doing some programming in order to, with your processes and your strategy. And again, this is where you become irreplaceable. It's one thing to find somebody who knows how to write a letter. It's another thing that finding the person that knows when to write the letter, how to use the right tool to write the letter, and what the right letter should say. So we go in here, and you can see that we have Power Apps, writing your own applications. And then we also have Power Automate. So Power Automate, I talked about briefly when I did the whiteboard for you. And I was talking with Power Automate of how it can be used in order to create a string of, if then, do this, then this, then this. So it's a series of steps, and you can modify those steps and you can have them push out to other applications. Power Automate is very, very cool. And I'm looking very forward to making some videos on the main channel. Well, this is the main channel, but on as a regular video as opposed to a live stream. And on live stream, maybe we'll build some live. That'll be fun to do as well. Power BI, living in Power BI. Anybody who's been a student of mine in my data courses, like Power BI is data visualization representation. It's more than that. So at the very sort of low end, it's a dashboarding tool. It's a tool you can use in order to create data visualizations. At a bit of a higher end, it's something we can do to collaborate on data visualizations, data modeling, and data parts. But think of it as the data tool. Many years ago, not many years ago, I guess many years ago, there used to be other tools that we would use, Performance Point Server. But anyways, now Excel and Power BI, that's how we present data to an audience that needs to absorb the data. PowerPoint is a tool that I would use to do presentations. I think most people are familiar with Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, and Outlook. Almost everybody understands those 4 apps. Project is dedicated to build project plans. SharePoint I briefly talked about. So SharePoint is one of those tools that we have as part of our infrastructure that is used for us to go in and provide a central repository for collaboration. Again, this used to be called Microsoft Portal Server. Oh, thanks, Jenna. Thanks. I'm glad you like this. Hopefully it is interesting. So SharePoint used to be called Microsoft Portal Server. So what it really is an intranet. So it's an internal web server, but the web has grown to not just be serving of pages and images. So, the earliest websites were just text and images. And then we added a text, an image, and a form for input. Then we added text, image, shopping carts, video. So web development, or the evolution of web has been massive. Think of SharePoint as even more massive as an internal portal, website, collaboration point, communication point. We can have everything in there. We can have video, we can have text, we can have lists, we can have database access, we can have applications. In fact, when you're using Microsoft Office applications on the web, then you're actually running through a SharePoint environment. Microsoft Stream is audio-visual, so it's for streaming video. So for example, if I go in and I create a video, I record a Teams video, then that video gets stored in Stream. So I could use this almost like my own television station if I want to have my own internal YouTube. So instead of putting my videos on YouTube, let's say I was building training videos and I had sensitive information, I could put them onto Microsoft Stream. And then I could give the appropriate permission to people to watch these streams. So it's like your own broadcasting environment. Microsoft Sway is really cool. It's sort of I need some tea. Oh, hang on a sec. Microsoft Sway, it's really cool. It's like the applications that people forget about, and I don't have it here. There's Microsoft Publisher for creating different types of published content. So it used to be, a lot of times we create newsletters and posters and stuff. Sway is sort of like telling a story. It's very PowerPointy in a way. It's almost like you could take PowerPoint and you could create an automatic show with PowerPoint and then run that like at a conference or something. Sway is kind of that, but a little bit different, if you would. Think of it like a content creation platform where you're presenting ideas, and Sway, hence, I'm trying to sway your opinion, but it is basically a tool to build self-running presentations, right? That's a bit of a simple analysis of it, but it is a very neat tool. The other one that goes with that is Publisher, and stay tuned because Microsoft has released another application called Clipchamp. And Clipchamp is an online video editing tool that you can use to create different videos and edit videos and TikTok videos, YouTube videos, stream videos, any type of video you want. You can use Clipchamp in order to do that. And I do have one video on the channel on Clipchamp, and I will be making some more because it's a free tool, or you can pay a little bit per month and it's not that expensive. And then you can do online video editing. So, the Publisher, Sway, and now Clipchamp are kind of not really well known, but they're great content creation tools. I also believe, and I don't know, I have no inside knowledge of this, but there's a tool out there called Canva and another tool out there called Genially. And I've made videos on both of those. And those tools are online design tools. And Canva in particular is really kind of taking the world by storm. I don't think Microsoft is just going to leave that alone. So I don't know. I have no inside information. But if you look at things like Sway, Publisher, Clipchamp, and the entire Microsoft 365, I think we're going to see some other types of content creation tools coming from Microsoft, or an evolution of their content creation tools, because I don't think they're just going to leave that for someone else to own if I think history as a guide. Then we have Microsoft Teams. Now, Teams, I've made tons of videos on the channel. It's one of the topics that I put a lot on the channel because it really is a great collaboration platform. But Teams works best when you hook all these other Microsoft 365 tools into it, right? Then we have a to-do, which is a to-do list. I'm going through some of these a little bit quickly now because, really tonight, I'm just going through a shopping cart and saying these are all the cool tools. And then subsequent to this, I will make other videos and I will do other Sunday sessions here, live streams, where I go into one tool in particular. But tonight, I really want you to have that really big overview. And yeah, Canva is awesome. Like Canva is a very good tool. Again, there's so much here to learn, but Canva is not a bad thing to learn either, just so you know. And it's got AI built into it as well. But if I think in the old days, if tomorrow I woke up and somebody said to me that Microsoft bought Canva for like some untold amount of money, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm not betting on it, obviously, but boy, that would be a good fit to Microsoft 365. If Microsoft 365 included Canva, wow. But right now it doesn't, so it is what it is. So to-do is to-do list. Visio is an interesting tool. That's an architectural and a design and electrical engineering. That's a design tool. So that's a way of communicating visually in a much more detailed way. And Visio is quite interesting because it can be data-driven as well. So you could, for example, have a Power BI that has a component in it, which is a Visio spreadsheet connected to a data source, which is connected to IoT sensors, and you have a live feed with the diagram changing based upon that IoT data coming in, driven by the visualization tool of Visio, where you can drill down into the architectural diagram of that particular part of your plant. And when I say you can do that, I mean, like, you can absolutely do that. That's not that hard to do if you understand the process, if you understand where the infrastructure is, and then you learn to click the appropriate buttons. Learning Visio, really hard. Learning Visio in order to do something, super easy, because you have a purpose behind the work you're doing. Then we have Viva Insights. I briefly spoke about this. So Viva Insights gives you insights into how you're working. It gives you insights into how your organization is working. So the old saying is, is your boss watching you? Yes, they are. If you're logged into Microsoft 365 at work, everything you're doing is being logged. And I mean, not in a nefarious way where, oh, they're watching me. But if we know that our organization is using Excel 10% of the day, then we know maybe we want some more Excel training. If we know that our organization is not using Visio, but we see the value in Visio, maybe we want to do some activities to encourage its use. So Viva Insights gives me a data insight into what's happening in my organization. And that can be very useful when combined with good management, good leadership, and with even maybe a partner to help you get processes in place, right? Way back in the days, I remember teaching Visio back in the technology infrastructure program. So Doughton was in my technology infrastructure management program at SAIT about 1 million years ago. I don't know how long ago it was. It wasn't that long ago, but it seems like a long time these days. But we used to teach Visio because it was a great tool for doing things like a network diagram, or doing things like making sure, and it's even gotten more complex, not complex, more powerful, because now I can hook it into, say, I can either deliver it to Power BI, and I can pull from, say, a SQL Server. I can pull from a lot of the Azure infrastructure. I'm not even touching on Azure. I'm just doing today is all about Microsoft 365. If you want me to go into Azure, that's a whole other presentation and a rabbit hole we can go down. That's a lot. Microsoft Whiteboard, I'm a big fan of that. I would say that Microsoft Whiteboard is the application that even put my channel on the map, because when everybody was struggling to teach remotely, I did some videos on Whiteboard that were quite popular. But that being said, I think it's a great tool for diagramming. And I'm a big fan of, if I present an image to you, okay, that's not bad. If you and I together interact and build an image together, and you can do that in Whiteboard, then we own it better and it's a little more effective. That's why classrooms have, the boards that we can go and write on. Microsoft Word we know about, right? So it's a tool that we can use to write documents. And then we have Yammer, which, think of that like your own private Facebook. So it's your own private like a Facebook or community type of server. And all of these can be plugged into SharePoint. So I could say, instead of going to like Facebook, Twitter, Canva, Adobe, I can just use all of the Microsoft 365. Some of these are equivalent. Some of them are better, but lesser known. But the one thing that we can say about Microsoft 365 is all of these integrate with each other. All of these allow me to collaborate. All of these tools here that I have will allow me to collaborate, to automate, to have one central security platform so that no matter who logs in, they can get access to what they need access to. They can get common and private storage. They can have private channels, public channels, teams for everybody, teams for specific groups. I can have processes that are augmented. And what I wanted to convey this evening, sort of hopefully I've done this, is I want you to think about Microsoft 365 not as a bundle of products, because that's what we used to think of them as way, way, way back. And this is now getting into the ancient days, right? When you went to the store, and they actually used to have these, you may not believe me, but they used to have computer shops. You would see on the shelf, you would see a whole bunch of different applications, right? And different applications would do different things. So there'd be an application be like, well, this one helps you write documents. This one helps you manage finances. This one lets you give presentations. And Microsoft had this brilliant idea that instead of selling you one application, what they would do is they would sell you all of the applications in a single box, and they would call that the Microsoft Suite. Now, I actually, instead of the Microsoft Suite, when I was younger, I used something called the Lotus Suite, which had Lotus 1, 2, 3, Freehand. I can't even remember the names of all of the applications that were part of it, but you bought one box, but it came with a bunch of different applications. Then what happened is they said, well, what we'll do is we'll let these applications talk with each other. And in the world of Microsoft, that was something called COM, which is Component Object Model. So what happened now is I could have a Word document, but in the Word document, I could embed an Excel spreadsheet. Or I could have a PowerPoint presentation, but in that PowerPoint presentation, I could have an Excel spreadsheet. And if I made a change to the Excel spreadsheet, that change would happen in my presentation, as long as I had the infrastructure and the people that were managing my file server had it. The problem is, if the link broke, right? So we had to do that. And now what we're seeing is it's a huge list of apps, I know. And and the reason that I'm going through this huge list of apps is because we really do want to be, oh, what's going on here? Yikes. I've lost my whiteboard here now. So let me see if I can, there we are. Let me grab this here. Okay. It is a huge, huge list of apps. And that's what I think the problem is now, that this box is now called Microsoft 365, right? Now, instead of just being component object model, now absolutely everything interacts with everything. It's no surprise that the logo for Microsoft 360 for Microsoft 365 is the Microsoft 365 logo with a world of apps around it. They all interact, they all connect, and it can be overwhelming because, back in the old days, if I wanted to learn how to write, all I would have to do is go and buy my word processing software, and I'd learn word processing. And if I wanted to learn how to use a spreadsheet, I'd go and buy 1, 2, 3 or Excel, right? And I'd learn how to do that. But that's not the world we live in now. The world we live in now is I don't care about the apps as much. Actually, what I care about is what do I want to do? And what I want to do is A, and then I want to do B, and then I want to do C, and then I want to hand it over to my friend who's going to do D, and my other friend is going to do E, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do F, but then my other friend here is going to do G. So we map out this process, but here's the trick. Now, in order to do the first part, I send an email. After I send the email, I then create a spreadsheet. After I create the spreadsheet, I create a Word document. Then what I do is I give it to my friend who makes a Power BI dashboard. My other friend, they're going to go in and they're going to create a PowerPoint presentation for the investors. And so it's what application in this process, this strategic process, what application is appropriate at the time. And by the way, all of us are going to be part of a Teams site that's connected to OneDrive and SharePoint in order for us to collaborate. And if you can get your head not around each individual application, but if you can get your head around the fact that we have strategic work to do and we collaborate on that strategic work, well, AI will never beat you, because that is the creative and strategic thinking that AI can't do. AI can make a very nice Word document. AI can make a very nice spreadsheet. AI can make a very nice PowerPoint presentation. But AI can't synthesize them strategically and with creative thinking to find the best way to reach objectives, not just of your own, but also collaboratively with others. And I think that's probably a good sort of note to leave tonight on. I hope you guys found this interesting, and more to the point, I hope that you'll join me in future Sunday live streams. I'm not sure if I'll do every Sunday, but I'll announce them about 24 hours in advance. So keep an eye out for them. And I hope you'll visit my channel with the regular videos, but you'll see that what I'm going to be doing more and more on that channel is, instead of saying, here's a cool tool, click this button, I'm going to say, here's a cool tool. Here's why it's cool. Here's where it can solve a problem. And here's how you use it to solve the problem. So there'll still be button clicking and such, but I really hope that through the Sunday live streams, we can spend more time using conceptualization and putting some context into these tools, interacting with each other in more of a strategic and collaborative way. So thank you guys so much. I'll better switch over to my other screen here. So I'll switch over to my other screen here, and we'll say, okay, so I hope that was useful for you. I hope you found that fun. I'll just get back to my Canva, or there we go. I got a camel, I got a cat on my head. So bye everybody. Me and my cat Fred are happy that you showed up during the live stream, and I hope to see you in future live streams, and or see you guys in the comment section of different videos that I have. Have a good evening, everybody. Just going to close out the live stream here if I can find my studio.